Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My traditional welcome, of course, depending upon what time you're tuning in. Appreciate you doing so. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 70. I'm the host of this. This is I'm Menelik Fernandez. Geez, you think I'd get the hang of this by 70 episodes? Uh, the premise of this show remains the same. Basically, we take teams and we run it back, so to speak, where we take a game that has previously been played and we look at how we prepared, what went into our scout, game time adjustments, what we thought after the game, if we would do anything differently or the same. This week, just like many of the previous weeks, been very fortunate to have guests from the game, coaches that were involved, joining us. All right, so take two, guys. I was halfway through the intro. I forget exactly where I was precisely, but internet is sometimes a bit of a challenge during these calls. So the game we are exploring today is Fraser Valley versus Guelph. This is from Canada's new pro league, which is the CEBL, which just completed its third season. This game is from August 15th, 2021. We're actually filming August 27th, so this one's pretty fresh in our guest's mind, I'm sure. And I'm very, very fortunate today to have Coach Tanner Massey join. Tanner was an assistant coach with Fraser Valley and then actually became the interim head coach towards the end of the season here as the head coach got COVID. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Tanner, if you give me a second, I'm going to try to do you justice with a warm welcome here. As I mentioned, you were an assistant coach with Fraser Valley this past season. You were an assistant coach with the Northern Arizona Suns in the G League for one season, was an assistant coach with Monumental Sports and Entertainment, a video coordinator with the Northern Arizona Suns one season prior, an assistant coach with the Hiroshima Dragonflies for one season, and then intern operations associate, assistant coach with Erie Bayhawks, an assistant coach with Union College, did his GA at South Alabama, and was a video coordinator at South Carolina. So I hope I got it all correct. But I am very, very happy and fortunate to be able to sit down with you, Tanner. Thanks so much for doing this. Welcome to Run It Back.
Thank you, Coach. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to chatting about this game. It was an adventure leading up to this game, but I learned a lot in the two games that I was head coach. And yeah, looking forward to diving in. I didn't dive in too much right after the game because we had another playoff game to prepare for. So, but I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. So let me just correct something from the intro here. Jimmy's just put this in the chat, and I want to make sure I get this right. Monumental Sports and Entertainment, that is the Capital City Go-Go. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So an assistant coach with the Capital City Go-Go. Jimmy, thanks for noticing that. I appreciate. We of course had Ryan Richmond on one time, so not the first gentleman with some experience with that organization. Happy to move through that. All right.
Thanks,
so going
Jimmy.
back. Going back to this game, this is not too long ago. You guys played Saskatchewan a few days prior to it. Give me some background first on, the CEBL as a league overall, and then sort of like where you were in the season leading into this game.
So, the CEBL, it just finished its third year of existence. Every season, it has gotten better, in my opinion. This was my first season in the league as well. The previous season was 3 weeks long in a bubble.
Right.
It was the first league to be in a bubble. So they take a lot of pride in it. It is very up and coming. And, they invest a lot of money, a lot of resources into it. The G League, the talent is getting better. More G League players are becoming involved as imports. And the Canadian pool and talent has improved. For example, Hamilton had Lindell Wigginton, who right. is highly skilled, very good player, played at Iowa State, but he is Canadian. So you're getting buy-in from those guys. So it's a very, very cool league for us in particular. Leading into the game, we had just come off of a road trip for 2 games versus Saskatchewan. For them, not speaking on another team, but they finished last. But they went through a big transition as well with their coaching staff. But they were highly competitive games and really pushed us. The thing about us leading into those matchups were we had created some momentum as we had played the best team in the league 4 consecutive times. So that was tough. That was tough. We went 0-4 versus them, but the last 2 games we played pretty well, and we should have won the 4th game versus them, but they ended up being the champions. So we had slowly built momentum, and then versus Saskatchewan, we played well. We won both games by double figures, and we really were hitting our stride. And everybody was healthy. We were feeling good, feeling confident that we could really make a push in the playoffs. And leading into the Guelph game, this was going to be our 2nd game versus them. We played them halfway about a month or 5 weeks prior, and we had 5 days in between those games, between the last game versus Saskatchewan and then versus Guelph, which was at home. So we were lucky we didn't have to travel again to Guelph.
So let's talk about those 5 days. Are you starting to scout for this game during those 5 days, or do you start it prior? And then let's talk about your scouting process. Like, what goes into it? Do you generate a report? Is it just video? Obviously, your head coach contracted COVID during this time period, and you, if I'm not mistaken, only got the news that it was going to be you as the bench boss like the day before type deal. So walk us through this period in terms of what's going on.
Yeah, you're right. You're correct. It was a challenge. It was a big challenge because there was a lot of uncertainty leading up to it. We knew we were going to play Guelph, I think, I don't know, probably after our first game versus Saskatchewan on that road trip.
Right.
And we were just starting to kind of slowly watch those guys. But I've been we were all kind of focused on, we really need to build momentum. We can't afford to come out slow or not focused versus Saskatchewan. So a big focus was, let's finish this. And then we have, 4 days really to prepare for Guelph. So that was good. And they, our last game, or the game versus Saskatchewan, I think was the 15th.
Yeah.
And Guelph had played their last game was, I think, the 10th. So we had a lot of things working for us, and that we were building momentum and playing, while those guys, they would not have played, leading into our game for almost a week and a half. So we were fortunate that we had some time to focus on Saskatchewan, and then we had 4 days to really lock in on Guelph. But so we fly back right after the next day, and as soon as we get back into the house where we were living, we kind of took a break, took a nap, got some food, and then we got back to kind of in our area as coaches downstairs, and we started watching Guelph. And at that point, Dave was still the head coach, and so we were locking in on some film, kind of doing our normal processes of breaking it down together, finding tendencies, all those things that coaches do. Well, the next day, so in this league, we do testing every other day. Every other day, we're going to test, but then there's specifics for day of games and all that. So, but on this occasion, so we test in the morning, and coach found out he got a positive result. It's a rapid test, so it's pretty quick. So I was like, "Hey man, take it again. Do another one." So he takes another one, positive again. So he's very upset, and it's like, "I can't go to practice." He calls the president and all that. So we go to practice. I just get there, and I'm driving separately. I didn't take any guys. I was told, don't take any players, because you've been around the coach, so you don't know if you have it, whatnot. So we get to the gym, and I get a phone call, probably 5 minutes. I just put my book down, my book bag down, put on my basketball shoes, and I already had the practice plan. I was going to stick to the plan we had worked on. And then I get a phone call from the GM. He's like, Tanner, you can't be in there. You got to go, like, right now. You got to go back to your room, isolate. Like, you just can't be there. So it was, up until that point, it was me and Coach Tony. And Coach Tony, he's 62 years old, did a phenomenal job.
Right.
But I had to leave. And so he took over practice. And he did not live with the rest of the coaching staff. He lived separately. So it was, he was on task with our practice plan, but it was only him. So I had to basically isolate for 3 days. And I kept getting negatives. I was testing, I was communicating. So leading into the game, there was a chance that I was not going to be the head coach. And, but whenever I got that positive test, that positive PCR test, which could take up to 24 hours, luckily for me, it only took 12. Then I became head coach. So, but I was not on the floor. I was not on the floor for practice or for shoot around leading into the game. And our game was at 1:00. So, there was no chance for us to work with our guys on the floor beforehand. So it was a challenge, but we did all our work through film. We did all our work, like normal with film, with a scouting report the night before. So, not much changed with that.
Like it. It's quite an unfortunate reality that all of these are becoming common stories in terms of how people are leading into games. Let's talk a little bit about what goes into your actual report that you would give your guys. And you mentioned you don't really have very much time on the floor with them, obviously, due to the uncertainty. So what kinds of things are you communicating to them based upon the report that you've sent them?
Yeah. So the night before the game, they will, at that point, we did everything through Zoom. Normally, we gather all our guys in a room that live on site with us. And then there are a couple other guys that live off site with their families or whatnot. And so we would Zoom them in. And then Coach Dave, he would always piece together a Word document, key points, kind of the message leading into the game. And then I would typically have all the film. So, and then that was discussed between Dave and I, and we'd watch it, kind of clean it up, organize it. But I was always in charge of presenting the personnel and presenting their actions as well as their defense. So, that was pretty normal, but going into it, the Word document just has the keys to winning, which is about 4 points. Typically, it listed their shooters and it listed the message of this is what we need to do collectively as a team to win. And then personnel film for this one, because it was the playoffs and we hadn't played them in a minute, they had a few roster changes as well. There were about 45 to 50 personnel clips. And then when it came to the actions, there was about 30 clips of their actions, typical transition, early offense, half court offense, sideline, baseline, specials. And then we had a lot more defense this time because they were throwing a lot of different stuff defensively versus their last three opponents. That's what we really go with, the last three opponents, scouting wise. So it was a good bit of information, but not atypical to what we normally give them.
So I love it, and it's hyper specific. It takes away a lot of the questions that I normally ask. With a lot of that stuff, you said you would typically clean it up amongst yourselves and then present it to your guys. What would the duration of that film be normally, and how is it delivered to your guys? Is it something that you would do on floor and then do a walkthrough in an ideal world, or is it something you'd send it to them and then you'd walk through things at another time?
Yeah, so no, great question. The duration of it, because we had to do Zoom, if you do not have an account with them, you can only go 40 minutes.
Right.
So, typically it was about 40 minutes, maybe 35 later in the season as we, started to weed some things out. But, so we would go over those things and then we would send it to the guys through WhatsApp. to the group. So they would get the Word document. They would also get the video that was sent, personnel and actions and defense. And then the next morning for shoot around, we would walk through those actions. The actions. We only gave them 3 actions in the film, and then we would typically walk through all of those actions, and maybe one baseline, one sideline, and then make a few extra points about like maybe an early offense, maybe hey, if we see this alignment for this special play, just know that that's coming.
Right.
So yeah, and then we go through that and shoot around, and that's pretty much it.
And is everybody getting all the same film, or are certain guys getting a little bit more for certain coverages, et cetera?
Everybody's getting the same film. Ideally, I would love to do, group specific, guards, wings, bigs, or something like that. But for time wise, we kind of kept it all together. So it was very beneficial. I thought the way we did it was good. We started off early in the season, the first 4 or 5 games doing, delivering handouts to the guys of, what coach had typed up. But we kind of got away with that, luckily, and that's all fine and good. So no paper scouts for the guys.
Right. So if there's a spectrum, and at one end of the spectrum is like, we do what we do and we're just going to do that well, versus the other end of the spectrum is like, we're hyper specialized based upon the opponent that we have type deal. Where would you say that you fall along that spectrum? And factor in for me, if you could, you've got tons of experience, in the G League with the CBL. At this level, there's a lot of players, as you mentioned, that come and go, right? Like the rosters change. So sort of factor in, doing what you do, especially on the defensive side, versus, oh, that guy's in the roster tonight, we got to change that a little bit to attack or defend him type deal.
Yep. So for example, well, I'll say we typically venture towards the former. We're going to do what we do. The roster was built a certain fashion to be very aggressive and be physical. And we had the bodies, especially at the guard position, to where we could do that. We had, 3 tremendous defenders. 2, at the point of attack, we're going to get into the ball full court. We are going to be physical versus shooters. And, at certain points versus opponents, we will, deny. And that was very beneficial with our group. I will say that they added a player late in their season, Guelph did, and he played, I think, 5 games leading into our game, Michael Bryson. And he was shooting the mess out of the ball. He was doing great. And so we had to pretty much own ball. We stick with our coverage. We stick with what we do. Off ball, that might change a little bit, whether we're going to deny a player. And then, for this game versus Michael Bryson, we were looking at top locking him off the ball because they ran a lot of staggers or just a point single action for him coming off. So, and they also had another great shooter in Ahmed Hill who shot over 40% from 3. So just kind of being aware of those guys and wanting to maintain our matchups off the ball versus him, keeping one of our best shooting wing defender on him, and as well as kind of taking them out of their actions to create advantages.
Right.
And that's something we hadn't done. I don't recall us doing versus another team that year.
So a little bit more specific for this matchup, just going into it. Talk to me a little bit about like rotations. Do you guys pre-script rotations? Do you like, for instance, do players know when they're coming in and out, or is some of it sort of done by feel or matchup? Is it a combination? What are you guys doing there?
Yep, and that's something we tinkered with throughout the season. We really started to look at scripting our substitution patterns because we needed to simplify our approach as a coaching staff.
Right.
About halfway through the season, it was necessary. So we had to take out some of these in-game decision making, and we really scripted out for a couple games. We scripted out our substitution patterns through the middle of the third quarter.
Right.
And after that, it was all right. Who's tired, who's playing well, who's not playing well. So anyway, but as the season went on, it kind of just took care of itself after a while. It really took care of itself towards the end, when we became big. We ended up starting two bigs at the 4 and 5, and we brought in who eventually became runner-up for Sixth Man of the Year on our team, in Shaq Keith. He had started for a bit. He came off the bench early in the season, began starting halfway through, and then the last 4 games or so, he came off the bench, and he was tremendous. But at that point, the substitutions kind of took care of themselves, and we didn't do it. I wouldn't say we did it on the fly, but we just I thought we had a pretty good feel as a staff of how long this guy can play, and then we sub in this guy. And we kind of got into a nice rotation, and guys got a feel for when they were coming in. And I thought the expectations and when they were supposed to get ready, really helped.
Love it. On the bench, what kinds of things are you guys focusing on, tracking, and then how do you implement change based upon those kinds of things, if at all?
So I will say, not in general, and I'm not taking into account this Guelph game, because with only 2 coaches, me and another assistant, we didn't have the bodies to track stuff. But
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my daughter just walks by casually in a princess dress with a tiara on, like we're not recording something, smiles at me and keeps walking, and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to keep my composure with that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, that's awesome. I didn't see it. I wish I would have. Man, she's having fun today.
Sorry, we were talking about on the bench, what you're tracking, and what's of importance, how you're implementing change.
Yes. So typically on the bench for most of the season, we are tracking. We have one of our coaches tracking fouls, personal fouls and team fouls and all that, and helping us with substitutions. We also had, and he was also tracking deflections, because we were, especially at home, when we were really able to track certain things for our halftime stats and then our full game stats, we were big on effort. So tracking deflections was a priority. And then for our home games, we also had another helper, and she was fantastic. She's playing pro ball, I think, in Ireland coming up this season, but she was at all of our practices, and she did a fantastic job for us, but she was tracking paint touches. And then we really looked at the stats on the box score, just to keep it simple, of rebounds, turnovers, assists, opposing point total, offensive second chance points. So we had a collection of about 8 stats that we would track. And then she had my computer on the side, and she would type in those numbers. And then those are kind of like our effort numbers that we would present to the guys at halftime. Right. And then at the end of the game, the following day, they would see, how they did each quarter. But tracking wise, we didn't get too in depth with the tracking. When we were doing our substitution patterns for a couple games, I was in charge of that. So that was just another thing. Ideally, I would love to track more, but with our coaching staff and how limited it became, we couldn't do too much.
Yeah, the unfortunate reality of much of coaching is we'd all love to do more, but the manpower doesn't allow for, so to speak. I have 2 questions from what you said. The first one is you mentioned you do actually look at the box and you'll implement the stuff and go and speak to them. What kinds of things are you saying? Is it topical, just along the lines of like, hey, we're getting killed on the boards, pick up the effort, or are there specific things that you try to implement based upon that? And then the second question is really just a quick question. For the paint touches that you're tracking, if there's multiple paint touches on one possession, are you statting them as multiple paint touches, or do they only get one paint touch for that whole possession?
Yeah, that's a multiple for us. So if it is, and there is some subjectivity, there's
Sure.
gray area to
Sure.
that, but that's why we had one person tracking that. There were times, specifically at home games, our other coach who was at our games, Taylor, she would track the paint touches, and she asked for clarity on things. But if there were multiple paint touches by either the drive, the post up, the cut, offensive rebounds, yeah, those are multiple paint touches. So you could have three in a possession, and
Right.
normally we led the league in paint in points scored in the paint. So we heavily relied on that, and we had the personnel that
Yeah, your
was
big's a monster.
yeah, no, he was fantastic. He was great, man, and um, he does not know how good he can be, like, or nor will he be. He does not know that yet. But he was defensive player of the year, and I think there's some really good players, but I think he finished. I bet you he would finish top 5 in the league and most valuable player as well, because I mean he averaged a ton of points for us,
Right.
and so we heavily relied on paint touches and paint points, and that helped. When it comes to delivering information to the guys, about for example, hey, we need to limit their second chance points or their paint points, so we have to make sure that all 5 guys are hitting. There were certain teams that sent a ton to the glass. There were teams such as Ottawa who had Nick Ward, just a huge body. Trying to think, not Guelph, but Niagara, for example, the next team we played, they had Javin Delorier, who averaged, I think, 5.8 offensive rebounds a game, which was more than double the next highest guy, which I
Right.
think was Nick Ward. So it's like every possession, he has to field 2 bodies on him. When the shot goes up, he has to field 2 bodies, cracking down, whatever it may be. We just got to keep him off the glass. So, those are things. I think it all just kind of depended on, the numbers. But typically our guys were pretty good at understanding what they needed to do, because we played an aggressive style there. We tried to eliminate the second guessing and keep it pretty simple for our guys, but it started with effort and conditioning. And if we handled those 2 areas, we felt pretty good versus the other team.
Love it. And then my last question before we delve into a little bit of video, unless some of the coaches that are on here have questions. This actually comes from Enrico, who's on here. It's become a staple question since doing the show with him. But do you guys do anything where you look at your scout and evaluate it after the game to see, this was on point and maybe we didn't execute, or this was off and we need to add or subtract to the scout in this? Is there any sort of evaluation of self in terms of what you're giving the guys afterwards? I know this game is fairly recent, but just give us an idea of what you're doing, if anything, in there.
Yep, not specifically with this game versus Guelph, but we didn't have, and that's fine, like a process after the game of evaluating our scout versus the result. I do think that's important, but for us, we didn't like track it that way.
Right.
We use film to help with that, but I think that's something that could have been useful, and probably something we would have done had we had more bodies, coaching wise afterward. Specifically early in the season when we had multiple coaches and computers available to break down film of the game that we just played, while the other coach is working on the next scout. It
Right.
just became where it was next game, we're cutting, we're moving on to the next game after we cut up film, for our guys from the previous game. And that would be done the night of. So then the next morning we have film ready for our guys. And after that, we're moving on. So ideally I would love it, but in my opinion, we didn't have the manpower to do that as much. But I think it is valuable, and probably more valuable than even what I give it credit for. That's a great question.
Yeah, no, I learned it from Enrico. I pat him on the back for it. It's something that when he sort of showed me his process, I was like, I'm doing that. That's going to happen in future. Schedules are tight. You don't always have the time to do it while you're in season, but definitely going to go back and take a look and evaluate things moving forward. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. If not, I'm going to move into a little bit of film here.
The one thing, Coach, that I'll add is we tried to do this as well. We tried to do a defensive accountability sheet, which I stole from a good friend of mine post game, which had to deal with coverages and personnel based, and then kind of our staples within our defense. So we tried to do that. If there's something I could go back and kind of do over as an assistant this year, would be to put more emphasis on that. But that was a way to as well. There were games where the team scored over 30 points because we messed up based on our coverage, based on what we went over.
Right.
And there were games where I think they had 15 or 17 points based on missed defensive assignments. So that was pretty revealing to me. But again, as the season went on, we didn't have the manpower to continue to do that, and while continuing to focus on the next game and all that. So, but
no, makes sense. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Tanner, I'm going to start this film. I'm going to let it, as I said, I'm going to try and let it play 3 times for each of the clips. What's playback speed like for you there? Is that smooth? Can you see it?
Yeah, no, it's just fine.
Okay, perfect. So, first time through, I'll just let it play. Second time, I'll fumble through a description for those who are listening instead of watching. Third time, all yours. We're just looking at the first play of the game for Guelph. Just fun fact for you that you wouldn't know. I've coached either directly or against many of the players in the CEBL, including many of the coaches as well. And then one of your co-assistants, KJ, is another guest on the show. So I was really excited to get into this game. Know a lot of the players, know a lot of the coaches. I know Coach Kissy, I played against him in high school, actually. So like I said, was really excited. This set is a bit of a staple of his, in my opinion. This is like a 1-4 set. Get a bit of an Iverson cut with a tight curl over top. Don't get anything out of it. They end up punching the ball and sort of shooting like a non-paint 2 on the offensive left side of the floor. So talk to me about, do you have the action? Is it something that you had scouted? Talk to me about what you see in terms of how well you matched up, played it, if you would do anything differently, any of those things. First play of the game.
Yes. So this play, it was scouted, but not given to the players. It was not one of their staples, but mainly out of like specials, they would love to throw a lob to Michael Bryson. Here versus Ahmed Hill, we would call this a white, where he is guarded one-on-one. He's a guy that we wanted to get him off the 3-point line, but as soon as he started to drive, we're not fouling. We're going to just contain, because that's an area of weakness for him. And I coached him in Northern Arizona,
right?
So I kind of know him. But typically this would be a lob for Bryson. They would lift the other corner up, but they would throw it to Bryson. But just throwing it into the post, and we're living in this scenario. And honestly, Alex Campbell, who's guarding him right here, was an unbelievable defender, one of the highest motor players I've ever been a part of. And defensively, he was the point of attack, but he also led the league in 3-pointers made, and I think 3rd or 4th in percentage. It was unbelievable. This guy is a tremendous player.
Yeah, he was incredible this year. I agree.
Yeah, and great discipline not to jump too high. Yeah, and then just kind of jump and land right in front of him. So
could you give us a little something about like the Iverson cut and the tight curl off of the other forward? The way that you guys wanted to play that. What's looks like you guys did exactly what you want, but just sort of take us through your teaching points.
Yes. So Ahmed Hill, we want to stay attached. Great shooter and coming off a lot of screens, stay attached. The guy he's coming off of is a non-threat as a scorer. So Brandon Gilbeck here does a great job in support. And, we're able to get back and recover. We do not want to switch with Brandon because he's such a great rim protector. But that was guarded appropriately for us.
Perfect. Love it. Your first play is the next one that I have. So it starts Malcolm reversing the ball, and then you guys go, I think it's just a wide pin down on the offensive left side of the floor. And then looks like you guys tried to get into a little bit of a two-man game on this side. And then we get sort of like a paint contested floater, and offensive rebound then gets stripped and goes out of bounds. Talk to me about what you guys wanted to establish, what you had sort of drawn up, what the idea was to start the game for you guys.
So this was an action we called Rocket, and this was something we put in 3 or 4 games prior. This is really what we wanted. We do not want this guy to go under the screen, so the angle of the screen has to be better. If we force an over, they're either going to switch it or it's going to be a 2-on-1 attack. Ideally, if they switch it, now Brandon has a big-time mismatch inside, and we look to throw it into him and make a play. But the screening angle wasn't right, so that kind of botched this play. But this was a play we had a lot of success on, especially when we first used it. And the guys trusted this action for the most part. So yeah,
love it. On the 3 side, do you have any rules in terms of like who cuts, who stays? Like what your actions you're doing, like camera screens or staying, keeping space? What sort of are you teaching your guys on the help side of the floor?
Yes. So here, you could say that our spacing needs to be a little better, specifically with Malcolm on the wing, number 11 here. But we really started to implement the 45 cuts, slash cuts, and whatnot. But with this Rocket set, because we wanted a deep side, a tight pick and roll here near the block. It's not necessarily a post up, but just kind of just extended off the block. So a lot of that is making the read versus Bryson and reading the drive. If we're able to get a paint touch and get inside, it's probably best to hold spacing here. And Malcolm's a great shooter. But we really started to emphasize the 45 cut halfway through the season.
So I go to runs every night here in Toronto, and Malcolm, before the CBL season started, would come often, and what a killer that guy is. Jeez.
Man, he's a dog. I love his work ethic, and he became very solid for us, and he is that great defender, specifically versus shooters, and he takes a lot of pride in that. And looking forward to seeing what happens with him going forward on the floor.
Me too. This is an early ATO here. I would call this like a Princeton type action, forwards up into to chin type action. So basically we got a handoff to the wing and a pin down on the other side. The ball gets reversed, and then you get this little chin back screen that turns into the pin down, looking for the shot or drive option with Malcolm coming off. Talk to me about options. Talk to me about what you were hoping to get out of it. Walk me through it from your perspective.
Yes. So for us, this is called chin lucky. For a shooter coming off, ideally, that's a 3. But he makes the correct read in that it's not there. They defend it pretty well in that they get him off the 3-point line with Cat Barber. So we don't create enough separation. I think Brandon could get more of the body on these screens. That's probably one thing he could improve upon, is being a bigger screener, more physical screener.
Right.
But Malcolm does a great job of making this read and at least making it a paint pull, which is something that we emphasized with our guards. Instead of settling for the 15 or the 18-foot mid-range shots, we're getting into the paint, and now we crash the offensive glass. So this was an ATO drawn up.
Love it. I got to give a shout out to my guy Jamal Reynolds in the corner. I went to China and coached him there. But it makes me sort of think. I didn't ask what your offensive rebounding philosophy is, and I know that when he was at Canisius, he was like one of the top offensive rebounders in all of the NCAA while he was there. So what are your cues to go? What are your rules on the offensive rebounding? How many do you send to the glass? That kind of deal.
Right. So we would like for our guys in the corners, in the corners to crash through the elbow, and which Jamal does, pretty well here. Kenny, he doesn't get back on the other corner, doesn't get back on the flight of the ball. But right here, the one delivering the ball to him, Shaq Keith on the wing, that's his job to get back. So the closest wing gets back. The ones in the corners, they're crashing through the elbows, and then normally our big, he's inside. He's just going to be there for the rebound anyway. But we gave our guys a good bit of freedom. For example, I think Jamal was first, or he was second in offensive rebounds behind Brandon, our 7-footer. And then our third best offensive rebounder was Alex Campbell. Our best rebounder in general was Alex Campbell. And he was, I don't want to call him the shortest player on our team, but he was super effective, and he was really good in crashing. And like every game, he would get an offensive rebound putback off of a free throw or just crashing. So we gave our guys a good bit of freedom to crash. Now, it wasn't reckless where all five were going, in my opinion, but we gave them freedom. And, we adjusted to our personnel because they were good with that.
Love it. This is a clip on the defending side. You guys were, if I'm not mistaken, icing the outside third floor or weaking, whatever you guys wanted to call it. And there's a couple clips with Cat Barber. I only pulled the one, and one other gentleman as well, where they snake and get in there. Talk to me sort of like your teaching points defensively against the snake, how you wanted to specifically, losing track of that, sorry. How you specifically wanted to guard it, and how you feel you guys did on this clip. So for anybody who's listening, we are on the offensive left side of the floor. The screen is almost sort of flat. They are icing, and he just, left to right crossover gets into the center of the floor, and Shaq does a great job of covering the nail. But they do sort of end up with a big little switch, and Malcolm's working his butt off on the block, and we get a contested three that they end up hitting.
Yes. So at the point of this screen, if it was probably anybody other than Ahmed Hill and probably Michael Bryson, I would say get under right here. Honestly, and ideally, you spin under this. If you spin under, he's not going to be able to roll you down and create a switch. Right. But we get caught. All right. Now, I will say as well, this is the best defensive stance that Shaq Keith at the nail had all season. It was unbelievable. And I think he probably just, got a dime on the other end. I think he had 9 assists this game, which is, he's a tremendous playmaker, but 9 assists was, I think, his high for the year. So I made sure to praise him on this defensive stance. It was awesome. But versus the snake, when it is, if ideally Malcolm gets back in front here, because he does take a lateral dribble and it is going away from the basket. So he is not getting downhill. He's not getting downhill because we have great nail presence, and LeVon Kendall, our big, he always shows his hands, and he does a great job with that presence. Okay. So Malcolm should switch back. All right. But we don't. That's okay. So now we trust Malcolm in this situation. Unbelievable defender, great body, and he competes his tail off. Versus this guy with the ball, this is a hot shooter. He is a close on toes, so to speak, where we want to get him off the line. However, in a live dribble, LeVon needs to have a hand above the ball. And that, I believe that was mentioned in the scout. It was on film, and it's got to carry a hand above the ball, because we want him to drive it anyway. And if he does drive it, good things are going to happen regardless. Right. So the breakdown started by us not maintaining the matchup. We didn't have to switch there. But it happened. We trust Malcolm in this situation. LeVon should just be up a little bit more.
With the switch, whose call is it? Is it the big or is it Malcolm's in this scenario as the, hey, I can't get back, or hey, I've got it, stay up type deal?
It's a marriage of both. Now, I cannot remember if LeVon just determined switch and if he declared it, but here it's a marriage of both. Whenever we went over this, I think in training camp, because it was at a college gym, we put it on the big because he's the one who sees that the guard is in trouble. A lot of guards, they want to say, I'm getting through it and I'm going to fight through. And, it's great that they, are assertive with that and, they trust their abilities, but we don't want them to get too crazy to where now they're trying to get back involved in the play, but they're not capable of getting back in front of the ball. So we want to put that on the big to declare it. And the idea is, Malcolm could easily switch back. We see there's no advantage, or he's not in trouble. He could switch back. But if we see that he is beat and there's no way for the on-ball defender to get back in front, then now switch, veer, switch, and we get back into that.
So as I mentioned, there were a bunch of clips that had the snake, like I said, a few of them with Cat Barber, who I think is a little bit faster than this ball handler, not as good of a shooter, in my opinion. Would you say that it becomes sort of scout specific too in terms of that, or is it just sort of more of an emergency situation where you have to read and react as to what's going on?
It is scout specific. There are teams who love to snake. In our league, Ottawa was one who loved to snake, and you could tell that. And they're a heavy paint attack team, so a ton of early ball screens, early horns action, all of that. So for them, you could tell because they snake daggum near every time, where they're trying to get downhill. So that was mentioned in the scout versus these guys. Specifically, I cannot recall, and it's hard for me anyway because I wasn't in there for practice. But it's something that we talked about just in general throughout the course of the season when it involved snaking the step up was when to declare the switch, when based on personnel, like for Cat Barber, he's probably not going to look to bring it back out like Ahmed Hill does. Cat Barber, he's trying to get into the body and get to the rim. Now, he's pretty limited when it comes to his finishes. So we decided if we can, if it's him, we know what he's going to try to do. He's not going to try to get back to his right hand. He's going to keep it to his left and then try to have a quick finish at the rim. So we can kind of play to that and understand. But yeah, it's something that we definitely talked about throughout the course of the season.
Like it. You mentioned the Ottawa Blackjacks. I want to give a shout out to Charles Dubois, who also a 905 assistant coach, but was actually my first guest ever on Run It Back. So
man, he's fantastic coach, and he did a great job with those guys and building that mindset. And first time I talked with him was in the playoffs in Edmonton, and very gracious. And man, he has a good thing going in Ottawa. They're a tremendous team.
Well, I mean, it feels like the show is rolling a little bit, and I just have so much gratitude towards him because, as I said, I'm some nobody reaching out like, hey, let's do a show. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So appreciate it. And we got, this was just a baseline out of bounds that I liked, where you guys have like your three in a line, I would say, on the offensive right lane line. The two low guys just sort of both pin in. You get a little 15 to 18-foot jump shot. Talk to me about like any options if it doesn't work out and how frequently you would run this. But this was simple, easy, something that I was just like, hey, I like this, easy.
Yeah. This is something that we decided to run versus man or zone. It is not ran, exactly like how it's drawn up, but we understood that their five wants to be in a drop. He wants to protect the basket. And Levon Kendall, he's super skilled and can shoot it and all that. So we're just like, hey, we're just going to wall in these guys, take out the switch. Everybody's going to be in the paint. We can just pop out. But credit to our guys for seeing that. They called this play and they executed it. We had smart players on the floor at this time, and I mean, all our guys are pretty smart. But they figured this out on the fly. It wasn't anything I did. And honestly, throughout the course of this game, the players, I didn't do it. I didn't do anything. Like these guys, they just hooped and they figured it out and they were great. So, but yeah, with LeBron right here, we are taking that every time for him.
Love it. And coach, that's a good problem to have when you have intelligent players that are figuring out things on their own, right?
Yeah, and just not having been there in practice leading up into the game, I had an idea of scouting defensively, but when it came to offense, I was like, hey man, you guys go and y'all just play. And man, I mean, ended up getting up by 35, I think, or something crazy. So
definitely way up there for a while. So this one's a staple question. I ask it all the time. Transition threes, yay or nay? And if yes, at your level, what sort of needs to happen to have the green light to be able to shoot them? Obviously, Malcolm's an excellent shooter, so walk me through it.
For me, I am a little more strict, I think, than many other coaches when it comes to shot selection. This one right here is great. We were talking about for most of the season, a 40% three-point shooter. He finished at 38. This game, he was rolling. I think he had 5 threes. So he had already hit at least 1 3, probably 2 before this one. Gets his feet set. That is knocked down. We worked on him shooting a ton of sit behind threes off DHOs. So, in a similar fashion, this is what it is. Sit behind 1-2 step shot, nice and easy, nice and smooth. This is another shot we will take 10 out of 10 times, whether you're rolling or you're not. And I think this is a comfortable shot for any player. I would be fine with any player as long as your feet are set, whether it's, a 1-2 step or, you pop both feet at the same time into it. I think it's great. I'm a big transition 3 guy. Early clock possessions in general, up until about the 18-second mark are high value. Once you get below that, that's when you start to see a drop off.
Right.
And because I guess of indecision and whatnot, forcing bad opportunities. But here, yeah, cannot argue with this one. This is great.
Love it. On the defendant side, this was, again, another guarding the snake action. This one was actually with Cat, as I mentioned. And I think the only reason that I pulled it is because you got a loaded corner instead of an empty corner. And I was just wondering if there were any differences in terms of what you teach with the loaded side as opposed to the empty side on this one.
No, not on this one. We scout purposes here, we knew that Cat Barber coming off, if he does cross over, he is not looking to attack. So getting back to his right hand to attack, he loves to keep it to his left. AC does a great job on the elbow versus a shooter, Ahmed Hill. Ryan Edgem, he's probably over helping just a little bit, specifically versus this action. Brandon Gill, and this is one thing I think that we should have done better in making it clear to our guys. And I take the responsibility, because I was defensive coordinator for a good portion of the year, was Brandon Gilbick at 7 foot does not need help in the paint. He is just fine in the paint. So I'm not saying we need to be hugged up out here, but there's no reason to transfer your weight and rush to the paint to help. Brandon's going to contain that. So, but Ryan, this is our starting 4, who was a 5 for us as well. Probably something he's not as familiar with in guarding, the lift. So, but I love this contest. I love this closeout versus TJ Law, who was shooting it pretty well leading up into the game, but he gets a high hand and he lands right in front of the shooter, which is very good. He can test on the shooting hand side. So, with this one here, if I'm looking at Kenny Manigault and Brandon right here, they do a really good job of just sticking with their matchup. And we all know that based on the personnel with Cat Barber looking to drive in more of a driver, that if he brings it back to his right hand, he's probably not going to drive it. So,
if I'm not mistaken, Edgem and Law are both Carleton guys. I think they both came through the system. I know one of the Edgems did. I don't know if it was him or his brother.
Yeah, these Carleton guys, oh man, they let you. Law is and Ryan, they let you know that they're Carleton guys. I mean, national champions. But no, it's just fine. I'm messing.
Yeah, well, I mean,
no, they are.
Kind of dominated Canadian basketball forever, so
I guess they have a right to, and it's fine. But yeah, no. So Ryan, he, they're both smart players. I love TJ Law going into this game. The guy who shot it, I had him down as an X factor because he's an aggressive rebounder. He was shooting it very well, and he's a very good cutter. I was like, man, if we limit his opportunities, I really like our chances. So
my only question about everything that you described was you gave credit to Shaq Keith before for being right over on the nail, and you mentioned that this gentleman does a good job of getting to the elbow. Obviously, scout specific as to how much you were pinching in versus the snake type action, etc. In terms of who you're guarding and how much leeway you can give.
Yep. Oh, right here. Yeah. I think AC, he could probably, like, his stance as Cat is about to use the screen, he's treating Ahmed like a deny. And, sometimes AC would do that, to where it's like, hey, and he would see it after every game of a couple instances where it's like, hey, we need you in the gap. We need you in a stance, having presentation. But here, I totally don't mind it because Ahmed's a great shooter. Cat Barber, he loves the mid-range as well. But as we all know, if there's any shot you're willing to live with for the most part, this is great. I do think Brandon could carry a high left hand here, just to kind of discourage a early shot attempt, at least have a contest hand. But I think AC right there is perfect. I think before Cat comes off the screen, he's denying a little bit. We probably clean that up. But I thought scout specific, that's pretty doggone good.
Love it. Next one I got is you guys threw in one clip of zone in the first part here. Why now? Why didn't you stay in for the clip's just a quick one. I mean, they just get a quick 3 out of it type deal. Why did you decide to go now, and why did you decide to come out of it relatively quick type deal?
Let me see real quick. All right, so
second quarter, 2:43 left. You guys are up 18 at this point.
Correct. If I could have this back, I wouldn't have done it. This was my call, with an understanding of, all right, you have to know where the threat is, number one. So AC is in too much off of Michael Bryson, who was the biggest threat coming into this scout from three. But I cannot remember if this isn't after a make, like, they're bringing it up the floor. I think this is off of a free throw. And, this is on me. Why didn't we stay in it? Because we felt like we didn't need to. It's not because he made the three, really. Yeah, I was really upset that he made it and that we weren't out there. But our man-to-man defense was doing a tremendous job. In 18 minutes of play, 17, 18 minutes of play, they only scored 30 points. So looking back on it, that's why we didn't need to go zone, because our man was doing great. I think I just wanted it. It was my first game as head coach for this team. And I think I just wanted a little variety to spice it up. And bang a three on you. So it was a learning experience that I learned pretty quick right after that. I was like, I shouldn't have done that. So
gotcha. I loved this action. This was an end of quarter action at just before the halftime mark here. I would just call this a double ghost with a corner pin. So for anybody who's listening, the ball's in the offensive left slot, pretty high. We're ticking down the clock, and we get a ghost out of the ball side corner. And then we get another ghost coming from what was the original offensive right slot. At the same time, the ball gets downhill, and we've got a corner pin happening from your big and a corner three from, looks like Jamal Reynolds there. Love the action. Walk me through it. Executed to a T, exactly how you drew up, options out of it, any of those good things.
Okay, so it was not this part here, right here, was not executed clean. The ghost screen. It is correct that the first ghost screen comes from the corner, and all credit here goes to our head coach. He put this in, and it was great. It was something we had discussed in prior games, but this, when it was ran correctly, we got great shots. But yeah, first guy from the corner, second guy from the wing. He's AC here is not supposed to hit number two to then slow up the action and then kind of congest the middle of the floor. You're not really supposed to hit anybody. But this is just smart basketball by our big guy in the weak side dunker, Levon. He sees that they're helping in a little too much. Jamal Reynolds, not a great shooter overall, but from the corner specifically, and this is for anybody but Jamal, he's pretty good out of the corners when it comes to shooting. So this is a great shot. This is great read by Levon. Kenny getting off of the ball here, drawing help. I don't quite know what Shaq is doing cutting right here because Kenny has a big gap or a big enough gap to where he can drive through that. But Levon, excellent job of screening in here. That is not part of the action, but that's just a tremendous read by a player with great experience playing at the highest levels outside the NBA.
So like the primary focus would probably be something off of the double ghost action, hoping that one of those two guys are open or the downhill drive is open type deal.
Yes. And we had some success hitting the second ghost screen in the corner, the slipping out versus a potential switch. And now, I think through the course of the season when we played this, I think we had probably at least 3 wide open shots out of the corner for it. So, the timing of it and, that first, the second ghost screen should be better, but still, even though we didn't execute that first part because of the IQ, the high IQ of our players, they still generated a very quality look.
Love it. This was a set of theirs that I liked. It was a horns orientation. They entered to the offensive left elbow, and then it sort of turns into a stagger up top. Just sort of wondering, they, if I remember correctly, they pop the first and roll the second, and they cut out of that filled corner, end up punching the ball, and he gets a little left-handed paint too. Talk to me about this set. Do you have it? Is it one that makes your scout? How do you feel you defended it? All that stuff, please.
No, I would call this this kind of double screen with a guard first as Nash action, but this did not make the scout. This is something that we, as soon as I saw it, and they ran Nash action before this play as well. I think it was their third quarter play, but so this is not something we went over. However, when it comes to personnel, this is assignment excellence. Malcolm is into the ball. He's into the shooter, 40+% from 3. Great. Kenny, he's guarding a non-threat from 3 in Cat Barber. So he's there in support. He sees that there's a potential switch opportunity. He takes it. They got a great screener as they're big. So we're able to navigate this switch opportunity. And now Malcolm, he's guarding a non-shooter. So he understands that. Kenny, he's pressing up. He understands Michael Bryson, biggest threat from 3. They throw it inside here. Great defense, just a little bit better offense with this hook shot, but we are living with this because he's he's the least threat on the floor for them. So
love it. Love it. So pros just being pros basically and recognizing what they need to do, help talking their way through it.
Yes, yeah, and it started with personnel. Those guys, and I gave credit to Malcolm. This was a play that the guys saw and like, look, they made the shot, but Malcolm, this was excellent. Kenny getting into the ball early, all that stuff was great.
Love it.
So, and then Brandon navigating the switch. He's pointing out, stay high, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Stay high, and that was growth by Brandon. He really struggled early in the season with his voice and communication, but he really improved going forward. So, yeah.
Well, I think I got about 4 more in here, so bear with me. I'm sorry.
That's on me. I need to go a little quicker.
No,
So
I'm good. So it's just you're trying to be respectful of your time, of course.
nah.
Third quarter, you guys are up quite a bit. This is an ATO that was drawn up. It looks like sort of like a 4-round-1 pinch post entry. You get 2 cuts and a switch. I think at this point, you guys are really rolling in the game. And I think the reason that I pulled it, not only because of the slip against the switch, but just sort of like what you're thinking, how you're maintaining composure, asking your guys to continue to execute all that kind of stuff. So we enter to that pinch post and we get a slip cut followed by a second cut. And then it turns into top pick and roll headed towards the double side. And then we kind of get like a favorable switch with TJ Law in behind your big. We throw it in and, clear out the side so that he can attack, dribble, baseline, fade away. So, non-pain 2 fadeaway aside, talk to me about the possession in terms of, like you're rolling, how do you keep your guys composed? What do you think of the action, all that stuff?
Well, I'll start with the very end of the play with this shot. Typically, again, we're talking about mid-range, but this is towards the end of the clock. And with LeVon Kendall, I called him Big Smooth, Sam Perkins, because this thing is money. 9 out of 10 times he's making this, even like versus TJ Law, pretty good defender, but doesn't have the size to and really disrupt this shot a ton. So we're living with that. That's beautiful. Love the possession. All right. I believe this was an ATO, but drawing it up like this didn't happen. It was more so here with Flash, starting with LeVon Kendall touching it. So LeVon was our best player out of Flash all season. Throw it to him, and now we're just cutting off of it. So this is stuff that we do work on, leading up into the game. But for him, this was probably his best game. If you were calculated this leading into this presentation, was LeVon had the best plus minus of any player. Like if you were to look at per minute, he had the best plus minus of any player on the floor this game. When it comes to composure, I think it's the word you said, or just kind of calming the guys down. Flash, although it lacks, there's a ton of reads out of it. Our guys really understood the reads and it calmed them down, especially when LeVon Kendall had the ball, because there was a ton of trust with him as the decision maker with the ball. And he's such a good passer with his height and all that. He gives of it. He's not going to force anything that's not there. So it really just calms our guys down. But we worked on the high flash read. We had a great back cut. Jamal follows it with a second cut, which was awesome. That was not drawn up, but that was awesome. But then he empties back out to the strong side. He wraps it basically. And that was part of our philosophy this season. But and then really after that, so flash is called, which is awesome. But now we get into the path, the play after the play. So early on in the season, posting up was not as much as heavily emphasized as play after the play option. But because Brandon Gilbert really improved, and because we added LeVon Kendall halfway through the season, we're like, hey, these guys get any type of mismatch, favorable or not as favorable, but if it's still a mismatch, amen. We're living with that because Brandon's hook shot is money, and LeVon Kendall in the post is pretty money too. So credit these guys, and then it's just snap mentality after that with Jamal cutting. Ideally, we have a 45 cut. Ideally, Jamal throws it in, and there's a strong side exchange, and then we get a 45 cut on the backside and a lift. But hey, man, it's just guys hooping right here, and this is beautiful. So
I love it. The flash game, I mean, obviously becoming quite a bit more popular. Bam Adebayo comes to mind instantly whenever flash is mentioned. For anybody who doesn't know, basically give it to your big and play off of them. Pass and chase, DHOs, pass and follow, all that kind of stuff. How are you guys teaching it? You guys have pretty shortened window. Is it just something that goes in your vitamins of like every day, just make some new reads and give them feedback on it? Or are you really breaking it down in terms of this is what we want to get into here, this is what we want to get into there?
yes, this was, I believe, the first thing that we put in offensively before training camp. The players saw film on this. And it was, as you mentioned, it was a ton of Miami Heat. It was a ton of Bam Adebayo. And there were a few other teams in there, Charlotte, I think maybe Boston a little bit, but mainly Miami, because you looked at our roster early in the season, we had playmakers. Can you still hear me, Coach?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
You're good.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I got your internet connection is unstable, so just making sure.
I'm sorry.
No. But we knew that we had to. Flash itself facilitates a ball movement mindset. I mean, you even look at the half court. You look back, 3 years ago or so with Philly when they ran A to B. Put Embiid at the elbow, and now we got cutters and shooters flying off. So it's like, instead of just relying on one-on-one on the perimeter and one-on-one in the post and then pick and roll as everybody else does, let's just have some fun. Let's have some fun with it and be spontaneous, with some rules, with some structure, with our low split, with our high split, with cutting off of the big at the elbow. Like, just really have some fun. And it built that everybody's a threat mindset. Anybody can get the shot. So that was something ingrained in our team from the very beginning. And I mean, they relied on it, and it was fine, towards the end of the season, where it was like, just come down and run flash. Just run it. We don't need to make it a play after the play.
Right.
Into flash. We can run it as soon as we cross half court. So.
And when you get into play after the play stuff, is that also stuff that you are teaching, or is that more like guidelines like, hey, late shot clock, we're looking for maydays and post touches, or high ball screen? They're just things that you implement, or are you actually practicing that, hey, the play's broken down, this is what we're going to do now?
Yeah. Mainly flash was that big play after the play. But we also worked on, if we execute our action in the half court and we create that switch, we know that, and we put the onus on both partners here. We put the onus on our bigs to seal and work for that position versus that mismatch. And we worked on our guards to, you got to throw Brandon the ball. You know what I mean? You got to throw him the ball. And that was really important. And that was a ton of growth that really built up the trust and the growth with our guys with that. So I would say, Maydays were never really a part of it. Going into the season, that was something I had down, but, the slipping out. But, we kind of added that in with the play you mentioned previously,
right.
You had on previously with the ghost screen. So, but going into the game, play after the play, it was mainly just continuing to ingrain flash and post.
Love it. I think just 3 more, sir. I'm sorry. Please let me know if you're good on time.
I'm great.
Third quarter, they got into a bit of zone. I think they only showed it one time previous. You guys just kind of like credit to the coach, seamlessly recognize and, hey, they're in zone. Let's run what we're running. What I liked about this particular clip was that it was a horn set against the zone. Don't see this very often in my conference by any means. For anybody who's listening, sorry, my daughter is bugging me a little bit here. Wants some candy, so she's got to get a little candy going. Apologies, everybody. So we get a little bit of like a top ball screen action, and your big rolls down, and we punch the ball. So now we're really well spaced out against the zone. On the bottom side, their low man is being occupied, and I put this in. Of course, I had to credit my guy. I had to put him in. Jamal makes an excellent back cut and the finish and one at the rim. But talk to me about if zone major scout, if you knew that you were going to run specifically like a horn set against it as a quick hitter type deal, or if you had like zone principles that your guys were just supposed to rely on and utilize.
Definitely. No, zone did make the scout. There was that we knew they were a heavy zone team based on previous scouts and based on our first game versus them. So we knew it was going to happen. And yeah, horns versus the zone, that's something we talked about all season as a way to counter the 2-3. And our guys recognizing that, and it was always a safe play out of timeouts. We would always have some wrinkle out of a horn set, but it's like, hey, if we have an idea that they're going to go zone, we might as well just make our first play out of the timeout chest or horns, so we can have something ready for either. So right. Our guys picking this up pretty quick, and there were moments in the game where early on in the season it would catch us by surprise, in the half court when we're expecting man and they go zone. But our guys, they matured, their basketball IQ grew during the season, and they declared it, bringing the ball up the floor. And it happened a few times, but then we just kind of make a play, and Jamal is an excellent cutter, cutting right behind Cat's head, and one.
Yeah, love it. As far as when you're playing against zone, is it just guys trying to make reads and react off of each other? You don't run very many actual like quick hitter type actions?
Yeah, it was more, kind of reacting to where the ball is. It's not like we're saying we got to get the ball in the middle of the floor every time. Right. It is great for that. And then, one thing I think we picked up on was getting guys to the corners when the ball is caught in the middle, getting our offensive players to the corners to try to get behind the zone, I thought was pretty effective. And but there we had a few quick hitters, but we trusted our guys that through the course of the shot clock that we could get something pretty good.
Love it. And then this is just one more momentum clip, again, sort of like flash game. Here we go. We got an entry, an over the top action, and then a slip of the screen, backdoor cut, Shaq for the finish. You guys, you see the fire in the background. You see Shaq having some fun with it. This again was just another great quick play that I liked, threw in there. And I mean, you guys are running away with it at this point. Keeping composure along the same lines was what I pulled it for. Also wanted to give credit to the guys. Talk to me about playing off of it and keeping composure at this point.
Man, I can't say enough good things. I told this to Shaq, and before the few seconds before this clip, even Shaq comes down and he's looking to he's kind of dribbling the ball ISO at the top of the key, and normally he would pull that. Normally he would pull a step back shot, and it'd be one where us coaches, we'd roll our eyes because he'd make it 1 out of 4, maybe 5 times.
Right.
But his growth throughout the season was awesome. And so he brings the ball out here, and then Levon, he's just like, he shows his hand and he's calling for it. And for Shaq to get off the ball and trust it was big. And then we get into this action and he benefits from it, and everybody's happy, right. And that's what Flash does, right? Everybody feels like they're involved.
Well, we'll look at your bench.
Oh man, Brandon, he's so happy because Levon helped him so much this season, on and off the floor. So anytime Levon did anything good, Brandon was just like his number one fan. But no, our bench was lit up after that. So that was one of my favorite plays.
Love it. And so now we're into Elam. I think I just pulled two clips from the Elam. This was an ATO that they drew up. It's the first clip of Elam. I only wanted to bring it up just because I think it's a pretty unique feature of the CABL that not, very many people would be familiar with. So first dead ball under 4 minutes, they add 9 to the leading team. And, is there any sort of special strategy? Like, obviously you want to be up at that point, but what are you guys thinking strategy wise once you hit the Elam ending part? And then this particular set is side out of bounds that they just lob right to the rim. Talk to me about how you guys played it and what you would like to do better there.
Yes, I wish I would have sniffed this out, because going into the game, as we mentioned, the very first play, Iverson looking for the lob, right?
Right.
They've ran this play, and if I had seen it, I wish I would have sniffed it out. But
I'll tell you
no,
something, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've seen, so I coached against Coach Kissy for 2 years, and he had a player named Daniel Algotti, who's just a fantastic player. I think I've seen this probably 15 times run for Daniel Algotti. So when I saw it, I was like, yep, there it is.
yeah, no, makes sense. And he ran this for Michael Bryson, and right here, this guy Michael Bryson going up for the lob. He was a G League slam dunk contest participant before,
Right.
so I knew when they signed him, great shooter, excellent athleticism. But we knew I had a feeling, and I can't remember if I told the guys like it's going to Bryson, like somehow, because he was super aggressive as a shooter in the second half. For one, they didn't have Ahmed Hill, and two, he can get hot in a moment, so he can get rolling. So I felt like if there was one way they were going to get back into this game, it was going to be because of him. Or the main way. So that was the idea. Now, typically in Elam, we're worried about us really just being solid, as opposed to surprising our guys with something new, whether it's, coverage or, we weren't a team that was like, all right, we're going to go 55 first possession right out of Elam, and now getting the guys kind of, derailed on certain things. We'd rather just, hey, we're going to be solid. We trust what we've done to be up at this point in Elam. So, yeah.
Love it. And then last play of the game is the last clip. Actually, no, I have two. I'm sorry. So your first one, is that right? Did I have two? I thought I only had the one. This is the smash on the drive. So Shaq, again, talking about his growth, being unselfish, attacked, a little lob over the top. So you guys are rolling at that point. And then the last clip, I'll just play them together. Maybe you could talk to them. But this was the sideline out of bounds that basically ended the game for you guys. Is it? My main question was like, is this one of your typical sideline out of bounds, or did you see something and put something special in? But basically, what we get is an enter to the offensive right wing. We get a bit of a flare for the inbounder, and then it turns into the low ball screen that you mentioned you were working with angles earlier. You get the reject out of it, and it turns into a drop off and another dump down, and then game time at the rim. So, just talk to me about both, I guess, really. I mean, the joy that goes through when you're here, do you feel like you're pretty close? And then with the sideline out of bounds, is it one of your typical ones? And what do you see in terms of execution?
Yeah. So going into the game, we knew that they would trap randomly, and that's how they got back in the game, full court. And right. So we knew that if we're able to break it and we have an advantage, break, you take it. We're going. We're trying to score. We're not looking to bring it back out, and then they're going to trap randomly again in half court. So let's attack it. So big time credit here by Shaq. Love his decision to just go use his body. He's very nimble for his size, but when he's physical like that and is able to draw attention, that's when he's at his best, when he's physical. So for him to get downhill like that, that was mentioned in the scout, but for him to execute it, that's great. That's all him. Here with this end of game, this is a play that we put in, another Miami Heat special. really the shooter is the inbounder, and we set a flare here for the shooter. We don't get that. We're kind of lost here, big possession, game-winning possession. There's a lot going on. But we know it's inevitable. But whenever that flare is not there, now we get into this deep side pick and roll. That's where the rocket idea came from, actually, is from this play.
Right.
Yeah. And then this is Kenny Manigault making the read, spinning off of the physicality of the on ball. We got Brandon making a smart short roll dive, and then we get great weak side action, and Shaq is right where he's supposed to be. So
Perfect. Love it. So exactly as drawn up, right?
not quite, because we don't get great screens. Again, by getting Kenny open, like where he caught it wasn't great, and then we kind of missed the flare. But I understand mentally where the guys were. They knew, like, I don't know. I don't even think they scored in Elam. Maybe they did. I don't remember. But so they did score, actually. They scored. But our guys, they were just ready to get it over with and move on.
So just sort of a side story before I wind it down, unless of course anybody has some questions. But I was in Vegas at the Summer League, sitting with James, who is a mutual friend of Tanner and myself, and I found out probably about an hour before the game that you were about to be the head coach. We had been talking about doing a show, just for anybody who's listening. So when I found out that you were about to be the head coach, I became very keen on listening and making sure I paid attention to what was going on. So I was cheering for you the whole way through. It was really nice to see you get a win, when you're taking the bench boss spot. And, congratulations on that. Thank you so much for sitting down, spending some time. Really appreciate you. Sorry that the daughter's just jumping in here. Say hello. Thank you.
That's awesome.
And yeah, she's a staple on the show for sure.
Yeah.
But just nothing but tremendous respect for what you're doing, and you got a fan up here, and really am happy that it was the first CEBL game I got to go through was with you. So thanks so much for spending your time.
Man, no, I appreciate it. And I have to apologize. I don't think we went through a lot of the questions that you gave me leading up to today. So that's probably me and my explanations are too long, but sorry.
No, not at all. So in my opinion, I think it's great when that happens, where somebody covers a lot of those questions by just when they're talking. So you've got an excellent command on. I ask too many questions at a time. I know this is a downfall. You've got an excellent ability to answer all of them. I appreciate. For all the people who listen and tune in, I thank you so much. I hope you continue to find value. For the coaches that hop on and are here live listening in, I really, really appreciate you guys. And obviously next week, tune in, and we'll have another guest for you. Appreciate Tanner, if you want to hang on a second after the recording. Usually we talk for a little bit, but nothing but respect. Thank you so much for this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Coach.